Okay, welcome to the Bob Ryan, Jeff Goodman Tanguay Along for the Ride podcast. It is the, final one as far as the Celtics season is concerned. We will continue to go throughout the summer. And on one end, I'm kind of bummed the Celtics run us over, but on the other end, we were all right. So anyways, he is the senior man. I'll go with Bob Ryan. They ran out of gas, and characteristically so. They fell apart at the end of this series. Bob, your thoughts?
I felt very, very good after Game 3. I certainly deluded myself into thinking that they had completely turned the corner, that they were ready to, put the crown on their head, that they had it all figured out. They had surmounted obstacles, and this was going to be the culmination of a wonderful story. And then they lost 3 in a row. And in so doing, they reverted at times to the stagnant offense and the recurrent turnovers. So we talked about turnovers. We talked about it in December, January. We certainly talked about it during this playoffs, and 22 more turnovers last night. And what will be forgotten, because nobody writes game stories anymore, and what would be forgotten is that they were in the game, that they had a shot. The Warriors opened the door by missing 10 straight threes at one point. The lead got down to 10, and it even got to 8. And at that point, they turned it over either 2 in a row or 2 out of 3. And then there was one crucial play, which probably won't be recorded for posterity. And let's give full credit to Kevon Looney. There was an offensive rebound. He plucked it right over the head of Marcus Smart and threw it out to Curry. Bang. And that was a dagger. That in a game was decided. That was his biggest single basket, I think, a momentum killer as there was in the whole game. And that's not going to be recorded. I want to go on record as saying Looney made a big play for them. And of course, Curry made the shot. So they summation, they don't deserve to win.
The game was gone. The game was lost at 21-0. That's what
it wasn't, though. It wasn't the thing, Jeff. It wasn't.
Think they could get it back, though. Yes, they made it. They made it where you were like, okay, if they can get it down to a 2-possession game. They never put real game pressure, I didn't think, on Golden State.
No, but it was. But when it suddenly dawned on me, I looked up at the board and I was keeping a lot of things in my head all night. Like at one point, the Warriors were 16 for 30 on threes and 11 for 30 on twos. I mean, welcome to basketball 2022, right? They missed 10 in a row. They were opening the door, and it was down to 10, and they had the mo, if you like it. And that's when these things happen. I'm sorry. The door was open. I'm not saying it was wide open, but it was open.
It was open a crack.
It was open a crack. And they didn't seize the opportunity.
Well, because you had Jayson Tatum, who, again, I've gone to bat for forever, and I will continue to go to bat for, but he was a no-show when it mattered most in the fourth quarter.
The other guy, his cohort was terrific, Jaylen Brown. And he had 34 points. And also Al, big brother Al.
That was good. Marcus Smart was disappointing, I thought, for the most part, for the majority of the series. To me, and I kind of keep going back to that. Like, I know he had this great season, and I know he proved all of us wrong that he could be a frontline point guard for a team that went 2 games away from winning the whole thing. So you got to give him a ton of credit. But you still watch him and you say to yourself, to me, I say to myself, like, he doesn't make life easier for guys that need some easy baskets at times, right? Like, Jayson Tatum's not doing anything. All right, move without the ball, and we're going to find you the ball. We're going to find you an easy hoop. Same thing with Jaylen Brown. We know if he dribbles more than twice, it's not going to end well. So what can we do to hide some of these weaknesses? What can we do to get these guys easy baskets? I just feel like they have to manufacture too much, and that's why the turnovers happen.
Yeah. Well,
to me, at the end of the day, the better team won. And one of the frustrating things I went through and through this, and Bob's not wrong when he said, geez, it looks like they had turned the corner. But all three of us at the beginning of the series, we've all seen enough basketball. I far be it from me to lump myself into the company of you two, but I've seen enough to know that Golden State was the better team going in. Not by a lot.
Steph.
Steph, but they were. But also, though, we had seen things during the year with Jordan Poole. Clay had a resume. And one of the things I was frustrated with is like, oh, the Celtics have more talent. I go, no. They don't. Not yet. They don't. So that was one of the frustrating points for me. To me, the better team won. It's as simple as that. So when you talk about Marcus Smart, though, Jeff, is that something that Ime Udoka can work with him on in the offseason?
I think you either have those instincts or you don't. And sometimes you see it with Marcus Smart. He threw a hell of a pass last night. So it's there, but it's not consistent enough. And, to me, I think Tatum will make the next step. I mean, he became a guy who, again, was a real good, willing passer this season. That was a part of his game that nobody had seen. Defensively, he stepped it up. But yeah, I feel like you could use one more guy who could make it. Here's the thing and Steph's at the highest of high levels. So like, I hate to compare anybody to Steph, but forget about his perimeter shot. Forget about that and just his handle and his ability to get wherever he wants on the court. That's such a skill and a gift to be able to get his shot off whenever he wants. Tatum couldn't do that against Wiggins. He couldn't do that. Jaylen Brown cannot do. Jaylen Brown's biggest asset is what? Scoring in transition, number one. And honestly, his perimeter shooting was his biggest asset in the postseason. Mm-hmm. So you need to find guys that can make plays off the bounce when the shot clock's going down, who, again, and Tatum really needs to be that guy, but he needs somebody else who can make his life a little bit easier. And I thought Ime, honestly, and he's done an incredible job this year. There's no bigger fan of the job Ime Udoka has done. I didn't think he really put Tatum in positions last night to succeed. Move him. Like, he was standing around too much.
Oh, yeah.
They were standing around too much. But Tatum was really, really standing around too much. Part of that's on Tatum, but part of that's got to be on Ime.
Well, that's a good point. I think there's a lot of reflection they're going to have to do to see what happened and to see what happened and what the difference is between themselves and the Warriors. And then there's so many things that last night, the bench scoring was nil. It was nil. Grant Williams did not score. I think he had one basket right at the end. At the end, and when it didn't matter. Derek White, who we've been lauding as being a very important factor, did not contribute much or anything offensively at all. No, so and now when there was nowhere else to turn, Pritchard was 0 for the game, and he Sunday had nowhere else to turn in that regard, and that was.
I've said that you need a shooter.
Well, I think we
were saying that, saying that there's nobody comparable to Jordan Poole or other guys like that. I've been saying for who's the next Lou Williams? They need that guy, but it'd be nice to have. In the end, but as I said, I'll be fully, I'll live with what I was saying earlier. I really felt really good after 3 games. I really thought that they were the better team. And I said categorically, and I can't refute it. I can't run away from it, that the only way they're going to lose this year, the only way is if they beat themselves with the turnovers.
And they did.
And it wasn't the only way. It was one of the ways. One of the ways they lost the game previously was missing 10 free throws. Now, that didn't happen last night. By the way, the Warriors, how many free throws did they make? 4? They went a lot. The Warriors won this whole game without ever getting to the line. And give them full credit. I mean, I can't say enough about the way they asserted themselves and proved to be what championship caliber play, thinking, acting, everything is all about. They taught a lesson. I hope the Celtics can learn from that lesson.
Well, we have a lot to cover here, but quickly, I do want to give Steph Curry his due because Jeff Goodman touched on it. And Bob, I'd like you to touch on it now because we heard what Jeff had to say, and I think Jeff was right. Curry is underrated when it comes to getting to the basket and his handle. He's just looked as a one-trick pony. But as we saw last night, that is not the case.
It's not remotely the case. I must say, I have been touting this throughout. If you ever go back and go over the tapes I love it when he goes to the basket. I love his ambidexterity. I love his finishing. And Jeff, you're so right. He made it look so easy last night. It was like anytime he wanted to go to the basket and he got killer, there were no killer. Well, I thought there was one killer hoop, but when they were actually in the game, but he just continually got to the basket as well. And then let's, oh, by the way, where'd those assists come from? Oh, by the way, how about the game he had 10 rebounds? You didn't even notice. He's a basketball player, a supremely, incredibly well-rounded basketball player. Offensively, one of the great handful of greatest players of all time.
And defense, another thing, let's talk about the defense, because we saw him play some defense last night.
He's improved. He's a wonderful player.
And so bad when he first came into the league. Like,
yeah, well,
the crazy part of Steph, like I remember it like it was yesterday, covering the draft and going through that process. And it was like, all right, number one, how's he going to guard anybody in the league? Number one, right? I mean, he looked like 160 pounds. Yeah. Number two, he's not a point guard. No. Right? He's not a point guard. No. So how is he going to play the point? Not a great athlete. Like, it was everything he's not. He's just a shooter. But man, defensively, he's gotten better where he's not a liability.
No, he's adequate to the task. I'll just put it that way. Yep. He's adequate to the task. He's not, not Clay was a superior defender, and before he got hurt, and he'll never be at that level, but he's good enough to fit into what they want to do. He's willing. He's put in the work. There's just no way to criticize him. It's just I hope people appreciate. If you're going to lose to somebody, you want to lose to somebody, that worthy, and to me, and and that's
what Steph did. And let's transition to Tatum now, because there's a lot of meat on that bone. What happened with Steph was he put the team on his shoulders and he carried it to a title, and Jayson Tatum did not. And I think that both of you have been very fair in saying it's still early in Jayson Tatum's career. Okay. So, we're making that clear. However, Jeff, was this guy hurt? We've heard about the shoulder. You heard about the wrist. Is it a legitimate excuse? Will we find out something down the road?
I don't know. I'm sure I'll find out something here in the next few days, how bad it was. Listen, he wasn't 100%. We know that, but a lot of guys, most guys aren't 100% at this point. I really thought Andrew Wiggins kind of stole his soul a little bit last night. I really do. I felt like Jayson was just overthinking everything because, what Wiggins has is the athleticism that Jayson Tatum does not. And Wiggins, when he's up to the task, I've always said this, has the potential to be one of the top 3 or 5 defenders in the world. But he's just never asserted himself to that consistently. Well, he did it here, and it was huge for them. But, listen, bottom line is Tatum's 24 years old. Is he a killer? No. Is he going to become a killer? Probably not. I mean, that's one of those things that generally you have it or you don't. Right. But I felt like with LeBron early in his career, wasn't that the knock, Bob, on LeBron?
Right through 2011. And right. It was coming out of that Dallas series. Yeah. He was rightfully criticized for not wanting to step up for the moment. And he had a catharsis in that series. That's a turning point in his career, as far as I'm concerned. And the year before, I was present and eyewitness to him. He did quit. He lollygagged.
This is the legacy today of Jayson Tatum. He's 24 years old. Like nobody's really going to remember this again unless he never gets this far again.
Right. Exactly. And so it's a lot to, hey, this is why, sports, there's always unfinished stories. There's always unfinished business. There's always, and it's a continuum. It's not a finality. And so, yeah, we're going to be, got to be a lot of things have to come out of this, a lot of soul searching, a lot of reflection, a lot of work. And
well, let's not forget what they did this year. I think that's the hard part right now is Celtics fans are going to be so upset with the fact that Jayson Tatum, well, he's not good enough to lead us to a title, this, that, and the other. Like, this was a team that was pure mediocre for so long, and they figured it out. And they have a coach that pushed all the right buttons to get them this far. And they had players that shed bad habits. Like, I was not the biggest Jaylen Brown fan. We know that. But, man, other than, again, him dribbling into traffic consistently, that dude makes threes consistently. He's got so much better at that. He's got some killer in him. He wants the ball when the game's on the line. There's a lot to be said about Jaylen Brown, and they were horrible together last night. Again, I think if you looked at it, I don't know how many times they passed it to one another last night. Not many, guys. Not many.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for that, but
I always look for that.
I wasn't looking for that.
Well, they all tried to win it. There's a desperation that jumps in there. Right. Like, I got to try to win it on myself. winning on my own, and the key to maturity, or one of the elements of maturity, is remaining composed when times get tough. And they didn't. That's
they hadn't
it.
been there. They hadn't been there, and the pressure was there. And Golden State had been there, done that. They weren't going to get rattled early in the game when it was 12-2. No big deal.
Yeah.
Steph literally goes onto that court every single time, not thinking he's the best player, knowing he's the best player. Where you can tell in Jayson Tatum's mind, he doesn't have that swagger yet. He doesn't.
Let's just identify the core three as one of the great trios of all time, because now they've won 4 in an 8-year span. Our first big three won 3 in a 5-year span, and 5 years, and never won again. And
2 of the years without Clay.
Yeah,
So,
I'm saying no, and this right. Well, that's something right. They didn't have Clay. 2 years, they were 15 and 50, whatever the hell they were. They had that one awful season, and the bounce back from that. No, but I'm just saying that this core group, and also Iguodala was also a member of that first championship team. Back after he was the MVP of the finals. He was inconsequential this year, except whatever he's contributing in the locker room, obviously. But the three good, it's.
What I'm saying though, it's like 4 and 6 years in a way.
Right. They've cemented their place in history. If anybody needed the affirmation, and I want to salute them. I'll give them a good podcast salute.
They're fun to watch. They're fun to watch. And Bob Myers deserves a ton of credit for this, because the way he put this team together, right? I mean, you draft Draymond. And I don't know if I think I told you guys a story of when I was sitting in the back seat, after we're driving over to do this slam dunk contest, and I'm talking to him about how, maybe he's going to be fortunate to stay in the NBA. But he sees something in Draymond Green as a 2nd round pick. Obviously, Steph wasn't somebody that anybody saw coming. No, right? Clay wasn't. I mean, some of the things, and those guys were, some were drafted before Miles, but Jordan Poole. Yeah, look at what he's been able to give them. He's pushed all the right buttons with putting this team together, not only with talented players, but I think with high character culture guys, like starting from the head coach. And that's why I'm wearing this hat, by the way, in honor of one Steve Curry.
Attaboy. Yeah, no, there's no question about that. Let's talk about Draymond for a second as a basketball player. Forget about the antics. Okay, you look up last night, and he's almost had what I would have called a baby triple. He had 12, 10, 8, so he was 2 assists away from a triple. We were a baby triple, but still, it's just indication of the impact he had in the game and the impact he can have in a game that just doesn't. Should be appreciated. He's a really a very intriguingly influential player many nights. And this was very subtle and quiet. And he won't get the credit, because it'll all be about Steph, but who's had a great game. But Draymond Green was very, very good last night.
Okay, so where do we start with the Celtics? First, I want to talk about the current roster. Then I think that we all agree there have to be additions. As I remember, all the great players, and Bob has pointed this out, whether it was Michael Jordan or whether it was Larry Bird, and I'm not comparing any of these guys to this, in the offseason, they all improved their games. Larry lost weight. He had to get more athletic. Michael became more of a distributor, more of a team guy. Jordan also hit the gym, obviously, with the weights. So, with Ime Udoka, now here's the real test. Bob, I'll start with you. Marcus Smart can become – we heard what Jeff said. We'll wait and see. Can he become a better point guard? Does he stay in the offseason? Does he work with Udoka? Does Tatum stay here and work in the offseason? Does Jaylen Brown get better with his dribble? I mean, my God, you can get better at this stuff if you work at it in the offseason.
Hard to get better at your handle.
Really?
Yes, that's one area that if you talk to enough people in the league, they will say that generally it's kind of like instinct. Same thing with Marcus Smart. And point guard instincts do you have them or don't you? Now you can have a mindset of being more of a facilitator, but either you see that play or you don't see that play. Either you have a good handle, you can get your shot better, but generally your handle is your handle. And that's a little scary for the Celtics' 2 best players right now.
Yeah, I'm going to take you at your word on that. I'd like to think that he can improve, and
I'm sure they can improve. I'm not saying they can't get better at it, but marginally. I don't think all of a sudden you're going to see Jaylen Brown have this incredible handle. He's going to be able to go to the basket and avoid some of those strips that he's been getting hit with here lately.
Well, something happened in this January. We still don't know what the receiver was, and he began to act much more like a conventional point guard, including the game I keep citing when he took 3 shots from the floor and had 13 assists, something we never thought was even remotely possible, and he did that. So I'm reasonably confident that we'll see that guy continually next year. But when you talk about improvement, Garrett, Bird went home one year and he came back working on his post up. He had a little throw shot in the baseline. He worked on his left hand one year, and Magic went home and became a better shooter. Magic was a very mediocre and not really much of a 3-point threat when he started. And by the end of his career, he was. And so anyway, guys, the great ones have traditionally done that. So, but they can't get much better. I think it's a matter of polish. It's a matter of, what lessons they can learn from this way. Maybe they'll study or Amy can help them study what the Warriors did and how you guys can reach that next level. But basically, you don't want to mess with the core group. I'm more concerned about but how much more does Al have? That's one concern.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and let's get to that, Bob. Let's get to the bench right now. Because to me, God bless, Grant and all that, but I really want an Eddie House. We need a PJ Brown. The Celtics, they cannot stand pat, and they have to start with the bench.
And well, with the bench came up, with goose egg in the biggest game of the year. Yeah, obviously we got no points based essentially from the bench with 0. Incontrovertible basket by Pritchard by Williams. The Pritchard was 0 for the game. White had laid an egg last night, and it was bad. I don't want to give up on him. I still think we saw too many good things on him, but they need help. I mean, is Pritchard the answer? Probably not. I guess they definitely need a shooter. They got to find a shooter. I've been screaming about this for a long time. But and any kind of good player that they can have that would bolster the roster, that can be in a rotation that would help for sure. But I'm more, sooner or later they're going to have to replace Al. I mean, I don't know what,
next year. He's got 1 year left, and I believe I don't know how much. I think half of it is.
Well, I wouldn't even ask for any more than one.
Right. No. Right. Exactly.
So if they can get the same or 85% or 90% of what they gave him this year, I'm fine with that.
You're going to get more out of Rob. You need a healthy Robert Williams.
Yes.
That's the difference from this year's team to next year's team, right? That's the one thing you can look at and say, all right, you know what? That could be significantly different in terms of the player and the health and the impact, because Grant Williams is probably, listen, I'm not sure if he's ever going to shoot the ball as well as he did this year again. I'm not saying it was a complete aberration here. He got better. He worked at it, but he shot the hell out of the ball. If he could shoot high 30s from three, that's a win. Peyton Pritchard is what he is, guys. He is what he is. Derek White hopefully can be more like the recent Derek White, not game 6, but prior to that, and he can make some shots and share point guard duties with Marcus Smart. So it's not just on Marcus Smart. But Robert Williams is the difference. I think you could, to me, Tice is still making a good amount of money. He's making about $9 million a year. He's fine as your rotation big, but you need Robert Williams to be better. Everybody else to take steps. Tatum and Brown to just be smarter in their decision-making as much as anything else, right? Smarter in their decision-making. And then you got to add one more piece. Right. And hopefully you bring on a veteran who wants to compete and maybe doesn't have an NBA title on their resume and looks at this team now and says, you know what? They were 2 games away. If I go there, I know I'm going to have a chance to compete for a title, so I'll go there for a little bit less money.
What do you want out of Robert Williams offensively?
Well, that pass he had last night shows you that you can play through Robert Williams to me at times. And he's not Al in terms of his decision-making. But I think what you have with Robert Williams when he's healthy is that lob threat consistently. when Tatum or Jaylen Brown are driving to the basket and they don't know what to do at times, just throw it up there because that dude's going to go get it. And he couldn't do that through the postseason consistently because his knee wouldn't allow him to.
No,
Hey, let's take a look at the conference next year. So Chris Middleton's healthy. It's a different ball game.
Mhm.
I have no idea what's going to happen in Brooklyn. I have no idea.
Nobody does.
Miami's going to get better, right? I mean, Miami needs to add some pieces.
Are they going to get better? Why are they going to get better? Kyle
Well, I'm saying,
Lowry,
okay, if I'm Brad Stevens, this is
They're
what
older.
I'm thinking. I have to assume Miami's going to get better. I have to assume that.
I don't know if I would. I don't know if I'd assume that because Kyle Lowry's only going to get older. And
No,
Jimmy
aren't
Butler,
they going to add pieces, Jeff? I mean, if you're Miami, you got to add pieces.
and you may. All I'm saying is they got a lot of money locked up right now, and Jimmy Butler's got a lot of mileage on that body, and Lowry's getting older, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I mean,
Okay.
Again, I think Milwaukee's the one I'd worry about in the East because you beat them without their all-star, their second all-star, their Robin, which is Chris Middleton, and they have that culture of still winning. Again, not at the level Golden State did with consistency, but they got one. And that one means a lot, especially when Middleton comes back healthy. They just got that kind of that chemistry. They got what the Celtics kind of think they have, but still need to do it a little bit longer.
and Philly's a wild card.
Yeah, well, Philly's a wild card, but Harden, I just think Harden's just going to keep going down.
Well, if he does, meanwhile, because Embiid's in his prime,
Right.
that's for sure.
Right. That's a shame. Well, what I'm saying, I guess overall, Bob, my overall thought is not to take anything away from the Celtics, and everything happens. Something goes down during the year. Every year, somebody gets hurt, but they had a path this year.
Sure.
And I don't want to assume that they're going to get back. I don't want to assume that.
No,
If
you're
I'm Brad
wise.
Stevens, I got to take a hard look at things to remain competitive.
You're wise to do that, and that's just the only. I will only go so far as to say they should be in the mix. They will be in the mix again. But no, this is. I'm not naive. This is an opportunity that they're going to regret. I think, and because it was there, and yet on the one hand, on the other hand, we identified they just weren't up to it yet. They weren't good enough yet. I was deluded after game 3. I swear I'll say it again. I thought they were the better team. I thought if they don't beat themselves, they're going to win this thing. And yes, it wasn't the only way they lost was beating themselves. The other team had a guy that, we couldn't match.
Exactly. Well, you thought at that point, and a lot of people did, that we could put Tatum and Steph in the same conversation.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jeff, to your point,
I was there.
I have to say, I'm kind of shocked Tatum didn't step up.
Of course, we all.
I mean, I'm really shocked. I'm like, I really expected it. I don't think less of him, but that's why I still wonder about that shoulder.
I thought he'd go for 40 last night. I
So did
really
I.
did. I believe.
So did I.
And I believe he'd go down firing, period. And,
So
and
did
that's, I guess, the part of his game that he's got to grow the most. And it's, I've said this before, we crucified him for being selfish and taking those dumb step back threes at times or driving into the lane and throwing it up there with 2 guys on him. And now he generally made the right play and was probably too selfless in our minds last night and through the series, right? Should have been more assertive, should have been more selfish, drive to the basket, try to do something. So I think he's still trying to figure out what the right play is and when to put your foot on the gas and when to trust your teammates. And at 24,
that's always. I mean, that is the story when people have a certain level of skill and they can accomplish. It's hard. The word I use, calibrate. That's the trick. And I remind people, it took Michael Jordan. He didn't win till his 7th year, and it wasn't just because of the surrounding cast. Trust me. He figured something. He finally figured out that calibration. And LeBron clearly after 2011, he realized things that I got to be more assertive. He was too deferential, and I keep saying Michael only won when he learned how to share, and LeBron only won when he finally won when he learned how to recognize he's the best player on the floor and act accordingly, and how best to utilize that skill while incorporating everybody else. It's not easy. It's a hard, subtle thing to do. If you're that type of player with that level of skill, the burden, suddenly there's a burden, you know? And
you know what the hard part is? Here's the only difference I would say with Tatum and like LeBron, you go, obviously Jordan, you go Kobe. Those guys were so athletic. Tatum's not that, right? He relies a ton on, as Bob said, his skill. Skill, you know, I called him the most complete player, and maybe that was the wrong terminology, but I think he's got the most complete skill set in the NBA. That may be more accurate. A guy who can shoot it from three, can shoot it from mid-range, can score around the basket, can defend, can rebound, can pass, can do it all. But he's not a great athlete. He's a very good athlete, but he's not LeBron, he's not MJ, he's not Kobe. Those guys could at any point just say, I'm going to go get one, because they were big, strong, athletic. Tatum's not that, and you could see that last night against Wiggins.
Yeah, well, some of the times when he goes to the basket, he finishes with an awful lot of dexterity. I mean, that to me, that's athleticism. Another guy has to be in this general discussion as to, you know, having the range of skill, and it's Durant. We don't want to forget Durant, you know, in this discussion, you know, and I mean, because he can get any shot.
7-1 helps there too.
He can get any shot he wants, right. and he's not a notably great passer. Good enough, you know. Yeah. Anyway.
All right, guys. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. We will be back next week, later in the week. We will start talking about the NBA draft. But this puts a wrap on the Celtics season. Bob Bryant, Jeff Goodman.